Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. I'm very pleased to welcome you today to this information session, which is being organised and convened by the multi-stakeholder partnership platform for AMR, where we are going to discuss the progress being made on establishing the independent panel for evidence for action against AMR, or more simply IPEA. I'm pleased to have colleagues from the quadripartite with us today, and they will share their latest updates and reflections on that process so far. And the objective of this session is to ensure that stakeholders from all sectors, those who contributed, those who are interested, those who are following the processes, everyone across all that broad range feel informed and updated on where this important global process has got to. And this reflects our approach in the MSPP as a whole of society approach. Everybody has a voice here, something to add. We will all about. Oops. Somebody got their mic on that is creating an echo. Can I ask that everybody goes on to mute, please? For just now, that's better. Thank you. So our objective in the MSPP is to connect all those with an interest in AMR, regardless of your sector, your discipline, your region, to understand drivers and motivations, build consensus and share vision, and to coordinate and collaborate on AMR in a One Health approach. That sounds like a big mouthful, but it's really about coming together with different perspectives and working together to where we can build consensus to drive global AMR action. And we have had good success, certainly up to the UNGA meeting last year on AMR, bringing together our shared understanding. It doesn't mean to say that we have to take a shared approach and input as our countries into when we feed back into processes, but that value of understanding where each other are coming from and being able to have those discussions. I'm Christine Middlemiss. I'm a member of the MSPP steering group, and I lead the government cluster in the MSPP. There's 5 clusters altogether. And I also happen in my day job to be the UK Chief Veterinary Officer, but I'm not here today to represent either the UK or animal health specifically, but rather to facilitate this conversation. Our session is planned for 2 hours today. I recognise that people may have to come and go. There are other meetings happening, but your input at any point, to say, is valuable. We will hear from the quadripartite organisations, as I said. We're going to hear about the proposed panel model, its governance structure, its functions, how it will operate, the role that stakeholders can have, and the next steps and way forward. So a lot of information coming at us in the update. As I said, this is not a formal part of the consultation process. The deadline for responses through your country's input is the 25th of November. But it is the opportunity to be informed, to help inform and consider how best to make your response and how to have it land. We really appreciate and thank you all for attending today, for all the stakeholders who have contributed to discussions so far, shared their vision and their expertise. The summary of the consultation is now finalised and will shortly be published on the MSPP webpage. The session will feature first a presentation from the quadripartite, and then we will have a question and answer session. As I said, you are giving your consultative feedback through your countries for the 25th of November in writing. So the questions today are more about the process and how it is working and clarifications about that. When we come to questions, I'll ask you to raise your hand. If you can also submit your question in the chat box and we will pick them up at that point. You will also find in the chat box a link to the quadripartite website where you can find the documents and the survey for submitting your written contributions. And as I noted, we invite and encourage governments to provide your inputs in writing, and we hope that today's session will be really useful in clarifying some of the information and updated papers, and I hope you understand where you can add best value for your country and for the global approach. We should know, and I think most people will have seen already coming up on screen, that this meeting is being recorded to help with note taking, and we hope it will be a fruitful discussion for us. And with that, I'd like to hand over to JP, please, who is going to make some brief welcoming remarks on behalf of the quadripartite. JP, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine, and of course the MSPP for hosting us today. Good morning, afternoon, and evening to your colleagues from around the world. A warm welcome to today's information session on the Independent Panel on Evidence for Action Against Antimicrobial Resistance, the IPEA. Thank you. Christine has already given us the objective for today, but I want to take this moment and say thank you. Your contributions during past consultations, namely the survey that you had to go through back in July, and then the past consultation through MSPP that was held on 8th and 9th of September, have been invaluable. Your continued communications and interests show how much this panel means for the global MR response. Now, as Christine said, we are here for one clear purpose. Soon, you'll have my colleagues who will walk you through the proposed scope, functions, structure, and other key considerations and informations that are relating to the establishment and operationalization of the panel. And we want for you to have clarity of where we are and what we have proposed in the documents. Again, as it has been mentioned, for the member states, please remember to complete the written consultation form. It's a vital step in shaping the founding document and operational documents. The question you raise and the feedback you provide will help us and will help as well to ensure that the panel reflects the diversity and expertise of all of this community. Now, for all other stakeholders, your engagement is still key. And today is also your space to ask questions and share your thoughts. Again, as I conclude, let's not forget this week is the World Antimicrobial Microbial Resistance Awareness Week. Wow, it's starting today, and I think for most of us, it's a powerful reminder that despite the many competing priorities we all face, AMR remains one of the most urgent health and development challenges of our time. Let's act now to secure our future. The IPEA is also about that, to ensure that the actions are guided by the best evidence. So let's make the session interactive, let's make it constructive, and let's keep moving forward together. Thank you for being here, and let's get started. Back to you, Christine.
Oops, sorry, I lost my mic thing. Great. So thank you for those introductory comments, and we're now going to move into our updates and presentation on the progress, starting with our colleague from FAO, Juanita Song, who's a Senior Animal Health Officer at FAO, and you, Juanita, I think, brilliant, the presentation is coming on, are going to give us an update on your part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian, and good day, everyone. So maybe Nydia, can you put me on slideshow mode?
Yes, it's there.
Yeah. Yes, now it is. Thank you. So I'm really delighted to be here joining our quadripartite colleagues in this evidence panel information session Let me start. Next one, please. Yeah, let me start by providing some quick background on how this evidence panel came out. AMR, as just mentioned by Christine, by JP, this is a global health and development challenge. It doesn't stop at the borders. We need one health approach to tackle this issue. To make this happen, the quadripartite organizations, FAO, UNEP, WHO, and WOHA joined forces. Our collaboration is guided by a strategic framework for cooperation by developed by the four organizations. So it's coordinated by the Joint Secretariat on AMR, hosted by WHO on behalf of the four organizations. So each organization brings its own strengths, expertise, and so together we can take a holistic, system-based approach. So our work covering, for example, global advocacy, stakeholder engagement, governance structures like GLG, MSPP, partnership, MPTF, technical work, and of course, strategic partners. Next slide, please. We have come a long way in recognize how big and urgent the AMR challenge really is. Countries and global partners have taken important steps, for example, developing national action plans at the country level. But the progress is still slow and uneven. So to tackle this gap, the UN set up the Interagency Coordinated Group on AMR back in 2019. IECG, that is called the ICGG group, they produced the IECG report. In this report, indicated that we need very strong global governance. So they proposed this three structure: Global Leaders Group on AMR, which was launched in 2020, the AMR Multi-Stakeholder Partnership Platform, MSPP, launched in 2022, and now this independent panel on evidence for action against AMR, which the quadripartite is now developing on it. Since 2024 political declaration, so the work on this new evidence panel has really picked up speed. Next slide, please. So this is UNGA 2024 AMR declaration. In paragraph 30, request the quadripartite to establish this evidence panel. The panel will generate and promote the use of multisectoral scientific evidence to support countries in tackling AMR. So UNGA declaration already highlight the panel must be developed using existing resources, avoiding duplication and following an open, transparent consultation with all member states on this composition, mandate, scope. Next slide, please. So the quadripartite has established a core group composed of technical experts from each organization to develop a roadmap for establishment of this evidence panel. This process began in early 2025 and is processing through several key steps. So the landscape analysis has been conducted along with development of the stakeholder mapping and engagement strategy. An online survey was carried out to gather inputs on key aspects to consider for the future the panel. Using this, based on all the inputs, a draft funding document was prepared by the quadripartite. And this draft was then consulted globally with a wider range of stakeholders through the MSPP, both virtually and also in written format. Based on stakeholder feedback, the funding document was refined and a set of supporting documents was developed, including rules, procedures, conflict interest. It was already posted on the QGS website. The first draft of the funding document and supporting package is currently being consulted with members through written consultations from November 11 to 25. So member inputs will be consolidated to further revise the funding document and supporting document. This document will then be undergo internal review, including legal review and clearance. Finally, the objective is to present and launch the funding document during a back-to-back events at UNEA on 10 December in Nairobi, Kenya. The supporting document will be finalized once the panel is established. I think I will stop there. Now I'll hand over to my colleagues Azabar from UNEP.
Thank you so much, Junsha, and good day to all. A pleasure to be here as well. So looking into the existing science policy panels, a robust panel usually has a funding document and a set of documents for the operationalization arrangements. The funding document is intended to serve as a concise framework outlining, in this case, IPEA's key elements, including the scope and functions and the organizational and governance structure. This serves for the establishment of the panel itself. Then, detailed provisions regarding the functioning of its constituent groups, including the procedures for the selection of members and admission of observers to the expert committee, decision-making processes, development of the work program, preparation and approval of deliverables, and mechanisms for identifying and managing conflicts of interest. All these are part of the set of documents for the operationalization of the panel. These documents, which will set out the panel's rules, policies, processes, and procedures, are to be formally adopted by the panel itself. Most of them have been developed, and these 0 drafts are now consulted prior to the launch of the panel so that we can expedite its operation. Next, please. Building upon the guidance of the UNGA declaration, political declaration, from the examples of existing science policy panels, and also from the multi-stakeholder consultations held in September, 4 key functions have been identified and are reflected in the revised draft of the funding document. Assessments, it's conducting independent, robust, and authoritative assessments of current issues and identifying potential evidence-based options to address them. Horizon scanning, identifying and prioritizing overlooked and emerging trends, risks, and impacts, and appropriate responses to these. Knowledge management, sharing information and identifying and highlighting research gaps, etc. And policy support, developing tools and methodologies based on its deliverables to guide decision-making at all levels. Next, please. As mentioned, institutional arrangements set out the architecture required for a panel to operate and deliver on its objective and functions. The structure suggested in the funding document describes the different components of IPEA as represented on the slide. The organizational structure includes the expert committee, which is the decision-making group who provides strategic direction and oversight. Ad hoc expert groups who implement panel's work program, including preparing specific deliverables, and the secretariat who gives the administrative and technical support to the expert committee and the ad hoc expert groups for the functioning of the panel. It should be noted that all these components together form IPEA or the panel. The role of the panel requires that it pays special attention to issues of scientific independence and conflicts of interest to maintain the integrity, credibility, relevance, and legitimacy of the outputs and processes undertaken, and also public confidence, which is fundamental. This is why a conflict of interest policy is drafted as a 0 draft for consideration of the panel, to ensure that conflicts of interest are identified, prevented, and managed, avoiding any adverse impact on the panel while protecting the person or people concerned, the panel itself, and the public interest. This policy applies to all parts of the panel, including members of the expert committee and any subsidiary groups contributing to the development of deliverables, and also to non-UN staff and partnerships supporting the panel's work. The outputs of the panel will be disseminated based on an outreach and communication strategy, transmitting and facilitating the use of relevant deliverables to international policy forums, such as the Ministerial Conference on AMR, the UNGA, and the governing bodies of one or more United Nations entities and other international mechanisms to enhance the impact and policy-making processes. Next, please. Moving to each of the elements and to better understand the functioning, we start with the expert committee. Next, please. As earlier mentioned, the expert committee is the decision-making group. It consists of 30 independent experts in individual capacity with a balanced representation across geography, sectors, gender, and disciplines, including representation of indigenous peoples, regions severely affected by AMR, and experts in economic, social sciences, and other relevant disciplines or fields. The committee is led by 2 co-chairs and 2 vice co-chairs and have a rapporteur. The nomination and selection of the members of the expert committee is based on criteria mentioned there related to expertise and knowledge of the panel's work. The expert committee will have a representative from each of the quadripartite organizations as ex officio members, and will also accept observers who qualify in the matters covered by the panel and who had informed of their wish in advance to the Secretariat. It is important to note that the committee will review its composition and functions no later than 2 years following its establishment. So this is a proposal that, of course, the committee will have a decision about. The nomination of experts will be done through an open call for expression of interest, and the election is to be done by consensus, or if the committee decides so, by vote. And to facilitate the continuity of the panel's work, members of the committee will have staggered terms with the aim of ensuring that no more than half of the committee members are elected at each of the session of the committee, so that we keep that continuity. Next, please. My colleague Silvia will continue with the functions. Thank you. Yes. Over to you.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So in these next few slides, I will share with you the function of the expert committee that play a central role in the panel. So the expert committee its main function is really to lead the development and the approval of the panel work program and the budget of the IPEA, based of course on request, based on input, based on suggestions from governments, from multilateral agreements, from UN entities, and from other intergovernmental bodies and international instruments, and as well other stakeholders. So specific function also include ensuring that the active and efficient participation of the observers in the meetings of the expert committee, the coordination with other relevant AMR governance structures, instruments, and bodies such as the GLG, the Global Leaders Group, and the MSPP, the AMR Multi-Stakeholder Partnership Platform, in order to leverage existing resources and to make sure that we don't duplicate effort that are already ongoing. Additionally, the expert committee will be tasked to overseeing the implementation of the panel work, including the allocation of financial resources, human resources, providing recommendation for the mobilization of resources. In addition, the committee will be charged in establishing and closing what we call subsidiary groups of the panel, which also include ad hoc expert group. And the committee will be charged to select the members of those groups, of the subsidiary groups, via an open and transparent process in accordance with the rules and procedures. The expert committee will be tasked to engage the scientific community and other knowledge holders in the implementation of the work program in order to ensure equitable and effective participation of experts in the panel work, such as through capacity building. In addition, the panel will be, the expert committee will be charged in task with developing and managing a transparent peer review process with, of course, the support of the Secretariat. And this will ensure the highest level possible of scientific quality, of independence, of inclusivity, of integrity and credibility of the deliverable produced by the panel. The expert committee will be charged to clear any deliverable that the panel produce, including accepting, reviewing, of course, and clearing and accepting technical reports and approving summaries for policymakers in accordance with processes and procedures that are set out in the relevant documents that accompany the panel functioning. The expert committee will be tasked to drive communication, outreach, and the dissemination of any deliverables that the panel produced at any level, at all levels, including ensuring that the output are timely communicated, transmitted, and facilitate the use of the output and relevant deliverables to international policy forum, such as we said before, the Global High-Level Ministerial Conference on AMR, the UN General Assembly, and the governing bodies of one or more the UN entities and other international mechanisms to enhance their impact on policy-making process. And then lastly, the expert committee will be tasked to review and approve the panel's rules, policies, processes, procedures, any amendment that is needed, and including the rules and procedures and the term of reference for a periodic independent evaluation process of the panel efficiency and effectiveness. Because yes, the panel needs to be, of course, monitored in terms of efficiency and effectiveness over time. And this group, expert committee, will be tasked with that. And if you can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. Now, now we have talked about the expert committee. Now let's move to the ad hoc groups. These ad hoc groups are in a way established by the expert committee, and they are established to realize specific objectives, such as time-bound ad hoc group preparing defined deliverables in an agreed work program. And of course, the development, the establishment of this ad hoc working group has to be agreed during a session of the expert committee, if there is the need. The expert committee shall determine the matter to be considered by any subsidiary group and should establish the term of reference for such subsidiary group or working group, including the duration and modality for conducting the work. The expert committee is tasked to determine the nomination and selection process of the expert included in the ad hoc groups, and is responsible also for preparing and clearing the deliverable produced by those groups. Any groups should elect its own officer, such as the co-chair and the rapporteur, and the procedure for the preparation and clearance of the deliverable by any ad hoc expert group are further defined in a separate procedural document, including how the nomination and selection of expert is conducted by the expert group. Next slide, please. And now I hand over to my colleagues for this continuation of the session.
Thank you very much.
Next slide, sorry, excuse me, next slide, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Silvia, and good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, wherever you are. It's a pleasure to be here running this information session on such an important panel, and we thank you really for your time. So it is my responsibility today to describe to you how the Secretariat has been imagined and the different functions. So if you can move to the next slide, please. So the Secretariat would be the body providing technical and administrative support to the expert committee and any subsidiary groups to the panel for the undertaking of their respective functions. The Secretariat will help in drafting the work program for approval, which is the responsibility of the expert committee, and it will also help in the coordination and the support of the implementation of such a work program in consultation with the expert committee. The Secretariat will also monitor and report progress to the expert committee on the implementation of such a work program, as well as of the associated budget. It will also help in the mobilization and management of the financial resources, managing contractual and legal matters related to the panel. It will also help in the dissemination of the panel's deliverables and conducting outreach activities in consultation with the expert committee. And it will also organize meetings and provide support for those, including the preparation of documents and reports for the expert committee. The Secretariat will enable the stakeholder participation in cooperation with this platform, the MSPP, Multi-Stakeholder Partnership Platform, and it will also propose and evaluate partnerships for consideration of the expert committee, supporting the implementation of those as guided by the expert committee. The panel secretariat will be jointly facilitated by the quadripartite organizations, namely FAO, UNEP, WHO, and WOA, and will be hosted by UNEP. And all the four organizations will coordinate the implementation of such functions. If you can move to the next slide, Nelea, please. As evoked in previous parts of the presentation, it is part of the experts committee function to drive communication and outreach, the dissemination of any deliverables produced by the panel at all levels, and this should include the ensured timely transmission and facilitation of the use by different international policy fora. We have imagined, because of the political declaration was asking to leverage of existing mechanisms, we have imagined this connection with political fora, with the Global High-Level Ministerial Conference on AMR that now are protocolized to happen every 2 years, and the next one will be happening in Nigeria in 2026. It will also be linking with the United Nations General Assembly, as well as with the governing bodies of one or more United Nations entities and other international mechanisms or intergovernmental organizations. And the goal is that this link is enhancing the impact of the deliverables of the panel on policy-making processes. If you can move to the next slide, please. The process to determine the panel's work plan is described in one of the documents that has been released for consultation, and we invite you to read it carefully. Basically, and based on the request, inputs and suggestions from governments, multilateral agreements, United Nations entities, other intergovernmental bodies or international instruments or stakeholders, the expert committee will approve the panel's work program and its budget. It will establish, depending on this work program, it will establish the different ad hoc expert groups to produce the different deliverables, and the expert committee will be clearing the deliverables produced by the panel, including the acceptance of technical reports and approving summaries for policymakers. Then, once the ad hoc groups have completed their task, they will be simply closed. All this process would be facilitated by the Secretariat, as described before, with the reception of 6 months in advance of the proposals, knowing that some exceptions could be accepted upon agreement with the co-chairs and the vice co-chairs. It will also be preparing, in close coordination with those two entities, co-chairing and vice co-chairing, a draft of the work program that will be presented to the expert committee for consideration and eventual approval, clustering the issues and proposing a ranking of different topics. If you can move to the next slide, please. And all that, it has to be sustained with different financial arrangements, of course. For that, a dedicated financial mechanism is envisaged to be made available, leveraging existing financial mechanisms and resources. Those will try to collect voluntary public and private contributions to support the work of the panel with a due diligence process to avoid any conflict of interest, and it would be governed by the relevant financial rules and procedures. The contributions to the financial mechanisms will come without any conditionality, will not orient the work of the panel, and cannot be earmarked for specific activities unless otherwise decided by the expert committee in accordance with the financial rules and procedures. In-kind contributions from different partners will come without conditionalities from governments, the scientific community, and other knowledge holders and stakeholders, and will be key to the success of the implementation of the work program. And with that, we conclude this presentation that we wanted to share with you, thanking you again for your engagement and your presence here. And then I hand it over back to the distinguished chair of this meeting. Back to you, Christine.
Great. Thank you, Javier and colleagues, very much. That was a really great run through the whole story of inception through to where we are now and all the current thinking that is going on. I have to find my place. And there was a lot of detail in there to consider, but also a lot of kind of logical understanding and progression of how we've got to where we are at the moment. But as we've all noted, and I keep underlining, it is now open for countries to submit their considerations of this latest development until the 25th of November. So we're now open to questions on what we have heard. Say this is not the consultation process, so this is for questions on the process as such. If you would like to take the floor, please raise your hand in the function that is available in Zoom, and we'll invite speakers in the order of the hands. When you are invited to speak, please unmute yourself, turn on your camera if you're able to, and importantly, briefly introduce yourself with your name and your organisation, because that all helps us understand and the different perspectives and things. There's also the possibility of putting questions in the chat if you're not able to come on screen and ask any questions, and we will pick them up from there. So I'll hand over, let me see. I'm having a look in the chat to see if there. So the first question I'm going to pick up from the chat, because I haven't seen any hands yet, but Nelia and Secretariat colleagues, if you spot hands and I haven't, please do pick them up. So we have a question from Munu Abu Sin. The governing and decision-making structures have changed considerably from draft 0 to draft 1. Can you provide some more background, please? Was that mainly based on the previous consultations, legal or constitutional advice or rules? Don't know if anyone is on from the speakers are able to pick up on that. Thank you.
Sure, I can, Christine, if I may.
Yes.
So yes, great question, as you just mentioned. So we take note of the change that is very visible in terms of the structure arrangement of the IPEA. And exactly it's due to those two major elements that you mentioned as well. I mean, the previous consultation that we received, and we really thank again all the stakeholders who participated. There were many issues or many suggestions that were raised. including the type of governance we had proposed, the type of a plenary constituted only by member states. There was also another big component of the lack of the scientific, I would say, the evidence part, which was not prominent to the structure that we had proposed. So we took that into consideration seriously and went back and we revisited almost everything to try to find how the evidence part really comes so strongly. And this new framing or new governance structure is also informed by that. We also had internal discussions weighing in our legal considerations and our different constituencies, the way that the decisions are taken inside the quadripartite organizations, and we also brought that component back in, which means here that for this panel to be more, to be able to set it in a short period, because as well we're considering AMR as an agency, so we don't have the luxury of going lengthy processes. Considering the potential cost that a such panel can require if you make it heavy, we had also to bring all of that as well in our thinking, and then we are proposing today a pretty different setup. But I hope you can also see that in terms of the functions and other considerations for the panel to be legitimate, the panel to be impactful. We've tried in the setup we are proposing today to preserve that. So there is really now, I think you can see that we've increased the number of experts, for example. We've given more mandate to the expert committee so that the evidence part comes very strongly in the setup. But we're also keeping a link to the existing political and governance structures to ensure that the outputs of the panel are going to still be considered in the discussion at different political fora, including the ministerial conference that we all are building to make it more effective, to the different governing bodies that the four organizations present, to the ANGA and other political fora, without necessarily having another level considered by the member states on this panel. So there were different elements that we considered, and that's the new modality that we have now submitted to the member states for their written comments. It's yet to be final because we are so willing to consider as well what the member states will tell us on this. But we felt that by doing so, we are aligning to both the feedback, the internal discussions we've had as well, and as well keeping the main function and the main purpose of the panel preserved.
Great, thank you, JP, for that detailed response, which is really welcome, and keeping the evidence experts, having a clear place for them, and enough of that expertise is really critical. Not just enough mass and volume, but the representation across the globe is really important. That's a personal view as such from working with panels. I know there's more questions in the chat, but I have a couple of hands up, so I'm going to come to the hands first, and then I will go back to chat. There's both modalities for asking questions, but first with hands we have Manyanga Abu. So we'll take your question first, please, and then I'll come to Noah, whose hand's up. Manyanga, over to you. Thank you. If you can come off mute, that's it. And if you can just introduce yourself and your organization. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody from wherever you're hearing me. I am Manyanga Abu from Nigeria. You see, I want to thank everybody, any one of you that has put his energy and time to produce this robust document. It's very, 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 very robust and running. Once more, thank you. But my question is, I want to know how many members, what's the number of the member of IPEA? How many? Want to know how many? I know the expert committee is a subset of the overall panel. Two, we want to know, like, for example, the expert committee, they say it's about 13. How is the distribution of those people within the 5 UN regions of the world? How many numbers go to Africa? How many numbers goes to Asia Pacific? How many numbers go to West Europe and East Europe and so on? We want to know how many, because it will create ambiguity if not properly stated and and highlighted. Then taking into consideration the gender factors, professionals and others. We want to know, at least as we are getting to the finality or the production of the documents, we want to know the exact number. Is it 20-member panel, 30-member panel? Where and who, from where, how many people come from each of the UN regional regions?
Yeah.
That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And that more clearly what I touched on about the expertise is really important, but it's not all just about having deep experts of AMR aspects, but also people who understand their region and can translate that. So I'm not sure who's able to, from the panel, to pick up on that question for us.
Or advise that IPEA can start, and then Sylvia can also complement.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your kind words. That is very appreciated, and also for the relevant question. The idea was to have everything balanced, and then we left it to that. And as you were saying, the different UN regions need to have representation, and thinking of something that it's proportional, because it's not the same number of people, etc., etc. But this needs to be, as we say, finally approved by the panel itself, because it's part of the rules of procedure. So we start with the 30 members, but the way of nomination will be based on the balance in terms of region, sectors, fields of expertise, etc., etc. So a number of factors to be considered. But the balance aspect is very important, as you were saying, for representativeness, but also for having that knowledge and that understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, IPEA.
Thank you for that response. And so I take from that, as you say, you're very aware of the need to balance, but the actual, it's not translated yet into numbers for region and everything, but coming back to, because we have to have the right expertise in that and work through that. I said I would come next to Noah, please, with your hand up. Then I'll go back to the chat, and then I'll come back to the further hands, just so people kind of know the sequence order. So Noah, with your hand up, would you like to come in, please?
Yeah. Good afternoon, team. I'm Noah Obey Nkrumah from Ghana. I am with the Technical Working Group on Antimicrobial Resistance, Use and Surveillance. Again, thank you very much for the presentation. I wanted to find out, could you kindly throw more light on how the ad hoc committees will be selected? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the question. Sylvia, are you still online? So if not, I can just jump in, and colleagues, please step in as well. Great question. The selection will be open and competitive based on clear criteria that will be set by the panel. So we can't exactly predict how many groups will be, ad hoc groups will be, because that will be dependent on the final work plan which will also be informed by the request from all the stakeholders. Then based on that, the panel itself will work on the terms of reference, of course, together with the Secretariat, and then we'll go ahead and select through an open competitive process the members of the ad hoc group. So that's our current proposal in the current documents, of course, pending the feedback we receive from the member states. And as IPEA mentioned, we will always be considering or taking into considerations the representativeness, both in terms of sector, in terms of regional perspectives. So all of these criteria will be applied when these groups will be consulted. Back to you, Christine.
Thank you, JP. So our next question is one from the chat from Viviana Munoz. I understand questions, as we said, are about the process. She would like to understand more about the functions of the quadripartite as the secretariat versus as an expert committee. The ex officio member would be differentiated. So based on the slide on the secretariat functions, how will we differentiate between where the quadripartite is a secretariat versus membership on the expert committee?
Javier will speak on our behalf.
Super, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. The Secretariat would be the body helping to operationalize and support all the operations of the expert committee. And it will be constituted by different people across the 4 organizations with, as it was stated, it will be hosted also by UNEP, but it will be basically helping to run the operations of the panel. Then the spaces that are in the expert committee for ex officio members of the quadripartite representatives, it would be related to senior management, and their role, it's more a strategic role or guidance role as part of the expert committee in the capacity of observers in the panel. It's explained in both the founding document as well as in the rule of procedures, but in very simple words, Secretariat would be running operations and taking care about all the logistics, while the ex officio members will be there, their voice will be there as observers in that panel, more on the strategic guidance or opinion. It's basically the same model that we are today running with the Global Leaders Group, where the 4 quadripartite principals have an ex officio seat in the Global Leaders Group, while the Secretariat today, hosted mainly by WHO, it's running the operations and the logistics, facilitating the normal life, I would say, of the panel. So I hope this is clarifying your question. Over to you, Christine.
Thanks, Javier. So back to some hands up. We have Munu Abusen from Germany. You had the first question in the chat, so coming back to you, and then we'll go to Jen Dow. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you all quadripartite joint secretariat colleagues and MSPP for hosting this information session and giving some more background, and also GP for answering to the first question I had. The second is more to the two annexes and more in detail, but maybe you can also shortly give some more background. The conflict of interest policy, there's one annex which really lays out how this will be handled and managed, and also for the rules and procedures. And we know it's extremely important, the credibility of the panel, and so really to be sure who are experts, how are conflict of interest managed. I was just wondering, because you mentioned for the nomination of candidates also, they can come partly from the governmental policy interface, but also scientifically expertise, but you also mentioned the private sector. I was just wondering how this is foreseen, if they are meant to be observers or if it really meant to be nomination within the nomination process for candidates. Thank you.
Thank you, Mina. I think GP you had talked.
Aitzba will speak on our behalf on this,
okay.
And I'll add.
Well, thank you for the question. The idea of the conflict of interest is to cover everyone, except the quadripartite organizations, because in our organizations we already have those code of conduct and several ethic rules and procedures. But for the rest of the members of the panel, independently if they are part of the expert committee or an ad hoc, time-bounded ad hoc group of experts producing a concrete deliverable where maybe, yes, a private sector individual could be invited to participate, that applies to everyone. And this is, again, let's also differentiate, because the funding document, it's a version that it's needed for the establishment, but the conflict of interest policy, we drafted the zero draft for the consideration of the panel. So the panel, once established, will need to see if there are issues that need to be included. We know that it's sensitive, and that's why we managed to collect a lot of information and put everything, all the cautious in there, knowing the sensitivities behind. But of course, as said, it's to the panel to see if this is the model that fits exactly the running of this specific panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And over to Jen Dow, please. Jen.
Thank you very much, Christine, and thank you so much to quadripartite colleagues. That was a really, really helpful presentation. I'm Jen Dow, I'm from the UK government. I've got a couple of little questions. The first of which is, obviously we've transitioned here from an intergovernmental panel to a non-intergovernmental panel, and Javier very helpfully laid out how member state interactions could be achieved. But I would note that that's not currently in the founding document. I was wondering if there was a proposal to sort of formalise that link between the ministerial conference and the panel, or if there's going to be some kind of language to show what that link will be between member states and the panel. And my second question was, you don't have too long before the launch. I was just wondering what your plan was in terms of revising the document that you have. Is there any intention to do that, and how do you wish to share that with member states ahead of the launch? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Javier, you would like to start?
Yes, the link, thank you very much for the question. The link with the policy-making bodies, it's already reflected in the founding document as part of the functions of the expert committee. The founding document, as it was mentioned before, it remains a simple document, which is defining the frame and the basic rules, the constitution of the panel. So we consider that with the level of information that is today provided in this document, the link with those policy-making panels is already established. And as Aitziber was mentioning yesterday, once this founding document is, let's say, accepted and the panel can be launched, then it will be the panel itself defining the rest of the rules and defining also the modalities and how they would like to, I would say, enhance or strengthen this link with the different policy making bodies. And then to your second question about the 2 weeks left, etc. And as JP has been mentioning all along the presentation, this is all depending on the feedback that we get from member states. Because if the feedback is requiring substantial changes to the proposal that we are making today, and that is the fruit of the first series of consultations plus tremendous work to reconcile a panel which is agile with a short time frame for the establishment and still impact in terms of policy making. So if the changes are not so significant, then we will be able to share timely the founding document before this launching event, because it's the main document that is needed to launch the panel. And then if the changes requested are more significant, then we will have to revert to you saying that we still need more time to fit the purpose that the member states have given to us through this written formal consultation. I hope these are answering your questions. Over to you, Christine.
Thank you, Javi. So I'm going back to the chat for some further questions. First from Ernest Obang, who says it's his first attendance at one of these meetings. So welcome, thank you for joining us. And he wants to know if there is going to be a group that would be monitoring the implementation of the policies that come from IPEA, or is that actually part of the wider role of the group itself?
If I may,
please, Aitaba,
yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the pertinent question. The different elements of the panel, the different components of the panel, they have different also aspects of the evaluation. So the Secretariat needs to be reporting and collecting all the information to report back to the expert committee. And the expert committee has among their functions to review and to comply with the rules and the deliverables. Also among the functions of the expert committee, and allow me to read it because we don't know them by heart almost, there is something that is reviewing and approving the panel's rules, policies, processes, procedures, and their amendments, including the rules of procedure and the terms of reference for a periodic independent evaluation process of the panel's efficiency and effectiveness. So the idea is that, of course, the normal day-to-day monitoring is internal, but then there needs to be an external evaluation that the committee has as one of the functions to make sure that this happens. So external evaluations are incorporated in there. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really clear. Thank you for that. The next one I have is from Qasim Abdi Molim. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing people's names. There's two questions. One, how do you coordinate and harmonise regional and national efforts? And how about capacity building related to stakeholders?
Tricia, are you still around? I think you presented the key functions. If you want to start on this. Tricia. Right, so then, then I'll take it. So yes, regional and national efforts. I think your question is broader than the IPEA we are discussing, but I'll try to find some answers for both. So as a One Health, we coordinate under the quadripartite joint secretariat, and we support some of the joint initiatives, and we are in touch with the regional colleagues, and as well we also work with the national coordination committees or mechanisms of different countries. We have different M&E tools that we use, tracks and different others. So that's how we get to know and we get to coordinate the joint work. But we also have sector-specific channel of coordination and work as well. Now, the capacity building as well is channeled through those mechanisms. But if you also saw that the IPEA now coming to the IPEA, we also thought the IPEA would have also a component of capacity building. And the purpose will be just to speak to stakeholders and give them the capacity to be able to interact with the panel itself. How, let's say, to read and understand the panel outputs, and also how the evidence gathering by the panel happens itself. And if the member states need to, let's say, customize whatever output is coming from the panel also can be able to support that type of capacity development. So it was a broad question, Christine, in case I went off. So feel free to come back and, direct it better.
Okay. Thank you, JP. So an invitation, if you want to, a more specific answer to give JP a steer on that. Next we have, it's a suggestion rather than questions, but I think it's quite good, so I'm going to read it out. From Tina, who says, great, I think referring to presentations, and he suggests unpacking the details. Of course, details will be important, and we'll know more of those as we go through that next round of consultation. To have a strong link between implementation with evidence, which personally I support, and then methods and metrics in these. Qasim, your next question, I think we've covered about regional base or sectoral, recognising there needs to be a balance of both, and just what that will look like will get worked through in the next round of considerations. So the further question is from Casimir from Rwanda, who wants to know how this initiative will bring together all sectors. So in the One Health space, human, crop and livestock. I think that's a pretty good question, because there's a real, as we've talked about, we need to balance expertise, we need to balance regional expertise. We also can't have a panel that's so enormous it's completely unwieldy and doesn't achieve anything. So how will the different One Health sectors be taken into account?
That's a great question. Javier, do you want to take this?
Yes, thank you. I would say that it's already reflected in the founding document when we look at the membership, that the expert committee is composed of 30 independent experts representing human, animal, plant health, agri-food and environmental sectors, as well as other relevant fields. And I think as this is part of the founding document, it's going to be one of the most important criteria for the selection of this expert committee that will happen once the panel is launched. And then the second element of response that I could add to that, and I think it's described in the rules of procedure, is when the election of the expert committee members, is that for the initial appointments, it would be the responsibility of the Secretariat in consultation with the Global Leaders Group, which is already multisectorial, to select the members of the first expert committee. So this is one of the responsibilities that we be, I would say, caring about this representativeness in conjunction with the other representativeness criteria that were mentioned before in terms of regions, balance, representation of indigenous people, etc., etc. As you see, we have to reconcile many variables to make something really expertise, representative, etc., etc. So I wanted also to emphasize that while perfection might be the enemy of the good, remember that this panel and the composition of this panel is intended to be renewed every 2 to 3 years, which is ensuring a natural, I would say, compensation of the flaws that we could have in terms of representativeness in the initial steps of the panel. But this multisectorial component is part of the foundational documents, which means that it's part of the constitution and the basic elements of the constitution of the panel. Thank you very much. Over to you, Christine.
Thanks, Javier. You used one of my favourite phrases there. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Well, we have a hand up, so I'll turn for a change to hands, and I'll come back to further questions in the chat. A hand from Tariq Alati from Kuwait. Over to you, and if you just introduce yourself and your organisation, thank you.
My name is Tariq Alati. I'm from Kuwait Institute for Scientific Research, and I'm very thankful for this opportunity and for all the hard work everybody has put together. There is a national and WHO regional country office just started in Kuwait 2 years ago, and we are trying to be a collaboration center with that. And the first exercise is actually in AMR, and would like to suggest or ask a question if you agree or you strongly disagree if we in Kuwait or other other countries would like to establish a similar system, like to have a national expertise or expert committee, an ad hoc committee and a secretariat, similar function to what you are doing, but at a national level. Would that boost the participation of each country in this IPEA? And again, I'm very thankful.
Thank you, Tariq. So his question is, if they established similar panels at national level in countries, and that would then feed into this panel, do the quadripartite see that as helpful?
Right. So I think thank you so much, Tarek, as well, for making that good comment. The first thing that I strongly agree with you is that structure might help at a national level. I think if you establish that and you connect the dots, alongside the National Action Plan implementation, I think you already solve an issue at the national level. Now, as you have seen as well in the founding document and other documents, the panel itself will have to consider other existing initiatives and networks on partnerships and institutions. And then they will be to the panel to deliberate and see who and in what capacity they work with. So I would still say that it's very useful, and I see it already at a national level, but I also see it as a potential collaboration that is what the panel can envision to look at.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tarek. Further in the chat, I don't actually have any other questions in the chat, so if people have more questions, do put your hand up or come in the chat. But I have two sort of comments. One from Marissa. In the future process, it would be better to have workshops at different levels, so national, regional, and then international, to be more effective. And the changes being made could be understood. There are a lot of changes, but having lots of panels is also lots of resource and people's time. And there's not much time given we have to respond by the 25th. And our secretariat for this is small. Also, personal observation, what I have also always benefited from as being part of this government cluster is the perspectives and views of people that I wouldn't come into normal contact with in normal regional panels and national panels. It makes you think differently about things. And then the second comment is for Asim, the livestock department in Pakistan, saying that we must consider the voice of the private vets in the panel, potentially as observers or some form of membership, and the expertise they bring. Unsurprisingly, as a vet myself and a long-term private vet, I would support that. Private vets, we know that there's a lot of evidence, are trusted communicators to our livestock keepers, and have an expert field view. Of course, there are many different sorts of private vets and lots of different views, as there are GPs and medical doctors, but it is good to point that out. Our colleague from Pakistan has put his hand up. Would you like to come in? Thank you. No. Your hand up. If you want to come in, Asim, our colleague from Pakistan, please do. I can see your hand is up if you want to further elaborate on your comment in the chat. Otherwise,
yeah. I actually wanted to explain my point of view. That we are talking about livestock. Definitely, the government sector is, in all Asia and around and Africa, the government sector is the main, who's looking after the livestock. But again, when coming to the poultry sector, it is more than 80% of the poultry is being handled by the private veterinarians, and the penetration of the private vets in the poultry sector, which is is main. As if we're talking about the antimicrobial resistance, so we should never forget the eggs and the poultry meat, especially in the last part of their rearing, whenever there is a bacterial stress. So most of the the usage of antibiotics is quite at large, and this is different from the livestock sector. So considering I myself is a government official, by the way, So, considering the private farmers and the private veterinarians, as far as the poultry sector is concerned, this should be kept in mind, and the people from the private sector must be, engaged. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Asim, for that. So I'll put a final call for any further questions, either in the chat or hands up. Otherwise, I will round this process off. Oh, we have one here in the chat from Hend Ibrahim. What about developing joint guidance models for alternative solutions to ensure the fair and responsible use of antimicrobials? This would be supported by laws and regulations to be in future implemented both internationally and nationally. I'm not sure if you want to, that's less of a process question and more about future policy. I don't know if any of our panel have any comment on that beyond for the moment.
Just a very simple comment. I'm glad to see the excitement that this panel is already creating, because we are already receiving suggestions of topics to be treated within the panel. So I would say thank you very much, and just be patient that we launch the panel, and keep this nice suggestion for later stages when for consideration in the work program of the expert committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Javier. And we have a hand up from our colleague. I'm afraid I'm going to mispronounce your name. My apologies. Satya.
Yeah.
But go ahead. I can see you've come off mute.
Yeah. So the important thing is, Christine and colleagues, unfortunately, I had to handle a bit of a crisis, so I joined very, very late.
All right.
So I missed most of the conversation, but I just wanted to know if, in this whole scheme of things, are the socio-behavioral sciences and the socio-economic sciences are being covered or not. That's all that I want to know, because I think I'm too late to ask more than that, because I missed the conversation.
I'm sure there'll be a way of getting access to the slides and the presentations for what you missed, so you can see it. Your question is really great, because even in the animal and plant world, they're attached to, people make decisions, right, about how the animals are kept and how the plants are farmed and used. So social behaviour is really, really important. So JP, I see you've come off mute. Maybe you would like to.
The answer is yes, and thank you for joining us.
And socioeconomics also, because there's economic dimensions, and the two are linked, right? So yeah, please go ahead.
We have already identified those areas. Yes, they'll be key to have as expertise, but as well as areas of the work for the panel.
Good.
Thank you. That's good.
Thank you for that reinforcement, JP. Yes, I also think that is good, because without understanding the drivers and motivators and the economic benefits for people, we're only, in my view, doing kind of half the job on expertise. I'm just checking in further questions that we have. So we had a further comment or a piece of information from our Ethiopian colleague Tinwa. They have a One Health AMR advisory committee and working groups, which have been established for quite some time now, since 2008, which have a similar function and has been instrumental in their approach in updating their AMR strategic plan. So there are some examples. Our Kuwait colleague raised whether having kind of mirror at national level would be helpful, and there are some examples of that happening. Great. If there are no further questions, then I want to thank everybody very much for engaging with this discussion, for the large number of people who have turned up to listen to the presentation, and very much to our quadripartite colleagues for taking us through this update, which has been most welcome and really will help inform people's responses into the further consultation. And thank you very much to Nelia and team for setting this up and hosting it. It's much appreciated because there's a lot of work behind the scenes to get all of this together. We understand, so as I've said already, the deadline for government submissions is the 25th of November. The quadripartite organisations will then finalise the documents and they aim to present the founding document in September during the UNEA side event, which is scheduled for the 10th of December. So you set yourselves a pretty short deadline, Alex. You've not got much time to, you're going to have a lot of work, but it's really good that we've had all the input that we have had. The multi-stakeholder partnership platform will continue to share updates on the process through the monthly newsletter. And if you have any questions, please contact the QGS Secretariat. The email is in the chat box. Thank you all very much for your participation. It has been very welcome to hear the different questions and perspectives. Much appreciated. And thanks again for quadripartite colleagues for that work, all the work you're doing on our behalf. And I wish you a good day or evening wherever you are. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you very
for
much.
your facilitation as well.
Thank you.